We will do. Okay. Welcome behind the scenes of the CoachCast, where we put the hosts in the guest seats. Jane, Ed, welcome. How are you feeling about today's interview that we're having here together?
Well, I'm excited and curious to see how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, feels strange being on the other side, right? So it's payback for a lot of people, probably. I say, Paul, people have sent you on messages to ask us, right, or questions. So should be fun. Let's see.
And please do, if you're watching this live, if you're watching this on Spotify, please do ask your questions to our podcast source. This is our opportunity to get them back and to be the ones that ask the questions. So brilliant stuff. So first of all, Jane and Ed, I just want to say a huge thank you for what you've pulled together in season 1. You have had some amazing conversations with some wonderful hosts from around the world. So a huge thank you for pulling this together, for creating that space of safety and space that really brings that curiosity and brings really good discussion out of the wonderful, wonderful guests that we've had. And you've really made our podcast a huge success within the first 6 months. So thank you to you both. We all really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Paul. And again, Jane, thank you for stepping in and being willing to do a co-host. I know there's not many podcasts like this, so I think that was really interesting, and curious is a great word, Paul. But for me, I just want to thank all the amazing guests, right? It was so transformative, impactful, powerful from every guest that we had, and it was just effortless, right? It didn't feel like we had to come on and kind of stage anything. We just loved the pure conversations that came from it, and those enriching conversations, but also for me anyway, making connections with people afterwards and just meeting them in person or by virtual coffee. And isn't that what kind of this is really about, is making that connection with individuals? So thank you, Paul, for bringing this idea and creating this platform for us to be able to do that.
I do agree with Ed. It's more of connection, and for me to stretching beyond my comfort zone, meeting new people, learning new things, because we don't know everything. So listen and be the one asking the questions. It just makes a whole difference. And I would say thank you to TM for pulling this through, because this is something that you don't see all the time. And having two people who are aligned, I appreciate you, Ed, because me and you, we've gotten along since day one. So it's something that is just amazing, 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 amazing. So thank you to CM as well, and to you, Ed, for bearing with me.
No, vice versa.
And thank you for the kind words. It's been an absolutely wonderful collaborative project. And like you said, Ed, I think the key word, if we could take one from me, my person, is connections. The connections that we've seen build, the people that we've brought forward, it's been absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to hold you to your word, because we do have Jane, you're saying how well you've connected. Let's test how well you've connected at the end with some quick fire questions that I've got to ask you both. But before we get into this, let's give our audience the opportunity to get to know their hosts a little bit more in a little bit more depth. So I'm just going to open up with the first question. Jane, I'm going to come to you first, and then we'll just mix and match as we go through these questions. But can you tell us 3 interesting personal facts about yourself?
When you phrase it interesting and personal. So 3 interesting facts about me. 1, I know I've said this a lot, but I'm an introvert with an extroverted vision. So I deeply love my space, protect my space. And some people pick it along the way with how I communicate with them, but it's just part of who I am. But I'm also driven by this massive passion to empower people, especially women. Number 2, I'm a full-time mom. Most people, when I tell them that, they don't believe me. Like, how are you able to show up? How are you able to do all the things that you're doing? But I'm a full-time mom, a job that I love. And I see it as a real leadership training role, because where can you get to practice empathy, negotiation, and even patience all in a single day? And I know, Ed, you can agree with me, because you're hands-on with your daughter. And then number 3, many people, I know Ed loves coffee. He runs to coffee. But myself, I'm on the opposite side. I love tea. I'm a tea enthusiast. That is me. Tea, anytime. It doesn't matter what type of tea it is, as long as it's tea. So those are 3 personal facts about me.
You're on the dark side, eh? Yeah, I would class the coffee as a dark side. I don't know about you, Ed. Which one would you say was darker, like tea or coffee?
Well, coming from Ireland, tea is super popular, right? So we
Yeah.
drink tea in the gallons. But I am a tea person, Jane, but my tea is usually at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. with a cookie. But then during the day,
Sorry, Ed, we just lost your sound there for a second. We got tea at about 8 p.m. with a cookie.
yeah, and coffee during the day to keep my energy high.
Okay, brilliant.
For me, I
Okay.
can do without coffee. I can, like, the last time I had coffee was in 2023. I can do without coffee.
Last time I had it was 8 o'clock this morning. So
I think for me it was about half an hour ago, just before this episode. So yeah, the second one of the day. So Ed, that leads us to, so Jane, thank you for that. Some beautiful things there, introversion with an extroversion vision. You've got a full-time mother and you're a tea drinker as well. So thank you for sharing those three very interesting facts. And Ed, I would love to hear yours, three personal
sure.
and interesting facts
Yeah.
for our audience.
Well, if you can't hear me, just let me know. But very similar to Jane, it's probably why we get on so well. I classify myself as an introvert as well. I'm very much about how I up my energy levels is by being in my own space at times, being able to disconnect. Don't get me wrong, I love spending time with my family and loved ones, but I really get my energy from just being around myself and being able to grow within myself. So similar to Jane, but then I'm very comfortable in extrovert situations, but I wouldn't classify myself as an extrovert because probably my biggest nightmare is small talk, going into a room and not knowing people, and I constantly have to push myself out of my comfort zones to do that. Put me in front of 1,000 people on stage, I have no issues. It's a weird one, right? But that's who I am. The other things is Jane mentioned it. If anybody asks me what do I do, I always say I'm a father first, because I started this kind of experience and journey 4 years ago, and it's just life changing. I started fatherhood very late. I was 40, so a bit of a personal fact. So I'm 45, coming up to 45 now. I still feel 18, and that's the way I view life. It's age is just a number. So a bit of a personal fact of who I am. I'm Irish, so I'm from Dublin. I still live here. Me and Jane have a bit of a running joke is that probably a lot of people already know a lot about me because I tell a lot of stories during our conversations. And I just highlighted to Jane, well, I am Irish and part of our culture is storytelling. So it just comes natural to me that we talk about ourselves to a degree. But what else can I share? My wife is originally from Brazil, so that's why I really gravitate to different cultures. I love traveling, and it's probably my biggest passion is to travel with a book. I'm obsessed with books, but I love experiencing cultures. Don't get me wrong, I love experiencing the cities and what they have, but there's nothing better than going out to the countryside and seeing how the people of that country live. And I love that. My dream this year is either to get to Mexico or to get to Vietnam. So that's what's on our cards. And our little daughter loves traveling as well. So she's been to a number of countries already at the age of 4. So yeah, I hope that shares a little bit about who I am. But I think our audience have probably heard enough from me over the 10 sessions that we've had over the last 6 months. So.
Yeah, but it's brilliant to put all that together as some very, very interesting facts there. Big fan of travel myself as well, which is brilliant. And I'm sure Vietnam and Mexico, I hope you can get one of them on the cards this year because that would be a beautiful and wonderful experience. And what's really interesting as well is we've got a podcast hosted by 2 introverts now, which is wonderful. So if we've got any introverts that are out there that think they can't step forward into the role of an extrovert, it's all possible. We've got 2 brilliant living examples. So I'm sure a lot of our guests and audience wouldn't have guessed that you were introverts. So brilliant stuff. No.
I actually thought Ed was an extrovert. This is quite interesting.
Yeah, I thought as well. I did. Yeah, I had that idea.
No, I'm very much an introvert. People that know me will say the same. I classify introvert not just as being on your own. There's different traits that are in that as well. But my wife is the opposite. So her ideal night out is going into the city centre, meeting friends. My ideal night is staying at home, reading a book in front of the fire. But I suppose that's what they say: chalk and cheese get on well, right? So, but yeah, very much an introvert.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. And my next question, so I'm going to stay with you for this, and we'll come back over to Jane, is what motivated you as an introvert, as an individual, as a coach, to become a podcast host?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you kind of posed this early last year, it was on my vision board for something that I wanted to do, because I found that area would be very challenging for me to step into, because I'm not somebody who gravitates to the limelight. Maybe people are like, "Oh my God, really?" But no, I'm not. Like, I don't really have birthdays. I don't like and the attention to be put onto me. But I suppose what was always in kind of a conversation that was running in my head is that I want to make an impact. And how do I make an impact is by getting out there and sharing stories and meeting people who are also out there to challenge the status quo. And I always wanted to do a podcast that was very natural and that really got to know who our hosts were and wasn't particularly, I'm not saying the CoachCast isn't, but wasn't really an overproduction or overstaged podcast, because for me personally, I don't always connect to them because I don't see the authentic pieces. And I think me and Jane, through our Wi-Fi issues and other issues, maybe our children come running in. That's what I love, right? Other people might find that as I'm not being perfect, but for me, that's what life as a father, as a mother, is. So yeah, Paul, when you mentioned it, it was like, it just felt like things were aligning and I just couldn't say no. I approached you obviously, but I couldn't say no to the podcast because it is challenging me every day because I'm not naturally comfortable doing this and I constantly have to keep pushing myself to do it.
And you're making a huge impact, and you keep that well hidden, because both of you, Jane and yourself, Ed, have done a fantastic job in the way in which you've held these sessions. So again, thank you, and thank you for sharing that. And Jane, I'd love to hear from you as well. What was it that motivated you to become a podcast host?
I was taking some of the things that Ed was saying. But for me, I would say, so before the CoachCast, I was still doing some workshops. I was doing live events. But then what made me say yes to this was the conversations that come as a form of connection, because in order for me to grow as a coach, I need to be surrounded by other like-minded people. Apart from the communities I have, it's also this, there's the conversations you have in communities. Some of them, they're not like deep as how we do in a podcast. So that was one thing that triggered me to say yes, that form of connection. And then the other thing is the why behind the CoachCast. As Ed has said, it's not a very perfect podcast where we have to be on our A game, we have to, things are overproduced. It's something that allows us to be ourselves, something that it allows us to present us and bring the human side of everything. So those two, I will say, are my top two of why I became a podcast host. And then the other thing is I'm practicing my communication when it comes to public speaking. I'm hoping that one day I'll be a TEDx speaker. So it starts with these small micro steps that you make.
No, brilliant. No, thank you for sharing that, Jane. I'm sure all our guests and our audience will agree that authentic feeling is really felt throughout each episode of the CoachCast. And not only do you bring your authentic selves, but you also create a space that allows our guests to be authentic as well, which is absolutely wonderful. And on that note, Jane, I'm just going to stay with you for the next question, and I'd love to hear from Ed as well. Is, you've done 10 podcast episodes now. We've got many lined up for the future. Really excited for those. But what feels like a good episode for you when you're in that space?
That's a good question and a tricky question. But I will say, to me, a good episode is one where I find myself, and I think you've noticed I'm constantly nodding along in most of the episodes that we've done, because it's that feeling when you're having that conversation with a guest and they just trigger curiosity within. I'm just like, okay, Jane, you need to learn more about that. So after the session, you want to dive deeper, you want to learn more about something, because some of the things we discuss, they're common sense, but they're not really common. You know about it, but you've never really paid attention to it. So for me, a good episode is where I'm like, okay, there's that curiosity. And I can tell you the last 10 episodes we did, each episode did that. Topics such as neurodiversity, that is something I knew, but I never really paid attention. How does it affect my coaching? How does it affect the people that I coach? Things like ego. Oh my goodness. You know, that session just left me thinking like, Jane, you need to have a meeting with yourself. So as a host, I just don't see myself as the person who is asking the questions or having all the answers, but I see myself as a student with all the listeners that we have. We are diving deep, we are learning, we are drinking from these amazing guests that we have. So for me, I will say that's what makes a great episode. And the last 10, they were amazing.
Oh, beautiful. Ed, do you agree? Any alignment there?
Yeah, I can echo a lot of those. And for me, what makes a great episode is actually forgetting that I'm on a podcast, because it feels just like a conversation with a friend or a colleague. And Jane mentioned that curiosity piece. And sometimes maybe me and Jane have to direct each other in the background and say, hey, we've got 5 minutes left, or we've got 10 minutes. So when you're in that space, it just feels so natural. So yeah, for me, it's actually forgetting that I'm on a podcast.
No, brilliant. As you're saying that, Ed, I was just having that same feeling when you were sharing there. I feel like we're on Zoom just having a conversation, not that we're actually on an episode interviewing you, because it just, the flow and the energy you guys bring is just fantastic. So thank you for that. And that leads me on to my next question, Ed. I'm going to stay with you. Actually, I'm going to open up to both of you, give you some time to think about this, because this might be one that we just need to reflect back and think about. But what is one unexpected or the most unexpected thing that one of our guests has taught you on this podcast?
I can go first, Jane, because it's actually very easy for me, and I don't mean to say that in a disingenuous way, but it was Kamal's piece, and I've mentioned this maybe in workshops before, and Jane mentioned it there sometimes about common sense or common themes, but sometimes they're not very common because you don't reflect on them enough, is spending more time to love yourself, and to really step into you, and look at you, and not to feel that it's selfish to do that. And I've always been an advocate for that. But that episode just kind of stuck with me, because maybe there was times when I didn't kind of see myself as that person that should be loved. And it's not easy for a man either in his late 40s to kind of step into that. But I'm very much about looking at my feelings as well, because I am a human being and I need to appreciate and respect those. So Kamal just opened up something for me to explore a little bit further. So that really resonated with me. But again, it's a hard question, Paul, because a lot of the sessions that we had, there was so many things I took away from it, to the point where I've connected with these people afterwards to have further conversations. So, but that one just sticks with me because it might seem simplistic, but it's probably one of the hardest things to also do.
Wow, I agree with Ed. Kamal's episode, I mentioned earlier about ego, and that awareness just stood out for me, because I had to assess myself and ask myself, do I bring this in coaching without even knowing that I'm doing it? Do I bring it in leadership? And then another conversation that really, really challenged me was the one for Lucy, where she was talking about generational, she was talking about knowledge, passing down knowledge up and down. And I asked myself, like, I'm always pouring out, and I'm always leaning towards listening to my peers, people of my age. But have I ever taken a step back and the people I have mentoring, and start listening to the wisdom that they have? So that really challenged me, and it actually made me say yes to something that I had said no a lot in 2025. Somebody owns a company, and she really wanted me to facilitate mindset sessions for kids 10 to 13 years old. And I was always telling her, me and kids, I'm not doing that. But you see, after that episode, I asked myself, hold on, I will learn something from these children, and I'm doing this session. So I ended up saying yes. And soon you'll be seeing me speaking to kids, and you wonder, how did Jane end up there? But it started with that session from Lucy. That really was unexpected for me.
No, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Two wonderful sessions there, Kamal and Lucy. But every session, I have to echo what you're saying there, Ed. You know, when I've listened to every session, there's been just something I took, that's really interesting. That's really great. And I want to learn a little bit more. There's always been something that's wanted me to learn a little bit more. And I can see why you've reached out afterwards, Ed, or they've reached out to you. You've connected with our guests because they're just full of wisdom, and everything they've shared has just been fantastic. And when it's delivered, like you mentioned, in that authentic way, we just connect with it at a different level. So thank you for sharing that. Now my next question, Mike. Sorry, Ed, is there something you want to jump in there?
No, all good.
No, so just my next question, it might give us some insights into season 2 and beyond. It might be something for anyone who's tuned in, who's watching this, to think and reflect upon. But what conversations do you feel are missing from our industry, our profession right now?
I think I can jump in first. I know right now, especially Coaching Minds, you're advocating a lot for ethics in coaching. We're advocating for people to get proper certifications. But then there's this AI world that is coming up. And I think right now that's a side that we need to speak up more, because we have to remind people that there's humanity behind the coach. So yes, we are automating our systems, they're saving us time, but we also need to remember, as a coach, I need to remember that, because there's cloning. I owe it to my client when it comes to ethics to be present for them and not just send my clone and let them do the session for me. And then I go home saying I've been paid and all that. So I think there's that, bringing in the humanity behind the coach, reminding the client and the coach that at the end of the day, as much as we have AI, we still need that connection, that human connection.
Yeah, from my side, I think AI is at the front of everybody's mind, right? And I think the more conversations we have with that helps us not to have, and I use the word balance a lot, not to have just the view that AI is evil and coaches are good, right? We can bring them together, as Jane mentioned, and I'd be very much about having those conversations that challenge us from both sides, right? To understand. And I know, Paul, you wrote a great article yesterday, and that's kind of where my thought tracks would be, right? That AI has its presence in coaching, but coaching is the human element. So, but we can marry the two of them together to help a coach. I suppose I'd love to hear more conversations around that. But what I've really enjoyed in season 1 was what Jane mentioned as well, stepping into topics that maybe I'm not too familiar with. And I love people educating me and helping me to create my awareness, because my intentions are always good, but maybe sometimes I don't say the right things. And I'd love coaches to be able, who are working in certain spaces, to be able to help me to grow and develop, so I can pass it backwards to my daughter, but also pass it forward then to people that I mentor as well. So that's what I believe life is about, coming back to the Irish of storytelling is, but just to really help people navigate the world, because it is a challenging place to be in. So I'd love to see coaches coming from different perspectives. Jane mentioned I loved about neurodiversity. I loved about Lucy's and then Kelly's. There was a lot of great conversations in there. I would love even to see more in season 2 of people that are maybe working in very niche areas in coaching that can really open up our perspectives on that. So they're the ones that I would love, but continuously I think the backbone of our conversations will always be around the coaching, the human element, and the ethics behind that, because I think we constantly need to educate people on that. Because even today, when you talk about coaching being a multi-billionaire industry, when I meet people on the street, they're still confused of what coaching is. So there's still a lot of work to do on the basics, right? And I think we need to remember that. So.
No, I love that, and I really resonate with you both, Ed. What I love about Ed and Jane, and what I love about, I was going back to your point there, Ed, what I really love about coaching, as you mentioned, is it's so diverse. There's so many different areas, different ways, different tools, different ways we can implement and use coaching. So just having all these niche and expertise areas would be really fantastic. And Jane, going back to the mention of AI, I think we're jumping. A lot of organizations jump really quick with AI, but I think it's still early doors. Yes, it's here and it's evolving quickly, but I think having more conversations, getting different perspectives, hosting people on this podcast will really help us get a clearer picture of where we think AI and our profession is going to go in the future. So I agree with you both. Really, really fantastic stuff. And the last question I have before we get into the quick fire round that I've got here, 9 questions to see how well you've connected, to see how you score, is how has hosting a podcast changed you as an individual?
Okay. For me, it's I had to maintain my beard a lot more. Had to get more haircuts. No, joking. No, it's just helped me with my confidence, right? As I said, I'm glad that I can come across as confident, maybe extroverted, but I'm very much introverted. I'm very much somebody who has to work on their own self-limiting beliefs. Me and Jane talk a lot about stories that we tell ourselves. So, but this podcast has made me realize that you need to take action, right? It's great having direction, it's great having a purpose, but I do need to take the action because otherwise I'm not moving towards the alignment piece that I want to be in. So for me, the podcast has just given me that exposure, and just thankful for that, right?
I would say
Yeah.
confidence too. I have grown in my confidence, and I'm actually collaborating with the best teacher when it comes to storytelling. So I'm learning how to bring in stories when I'm communicating, when I'm talking, as I prepare for the TEDx thing. So Ed, I'm drinking from your cup, how you bring in stories, how you blend it in the conversations that you're having. But definitely I've been stretched out of my comfort zone. I just like Ed, as someone might think that, oh, these two, they're so confident, but you have no idea what comes behind every episode. But I will also say in 2022 I was a student of the industry in coaching, but right now by doing this podcast I've become someone who is not just a student but someone who is actively shaping the future of the coaching industry. So I can say that is a huge change for me. Now when I'm having conversations with coaches, whether they're certified or not certified, I make it my business not to call them out, especially those who are not certified, but also to bring that awareness to them to understand what coaching is. Yesterday, I got a message from someone telling me, Jane, you know what? That conversation we had, it's time for me to take action and look for a school where I can, it brings me joy when I know that just one person, that's okay for me. So it has changed the conversations, my confidence, and I'm still learning under my leader, Ed.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Jen. And Jen, I think you made a really beautiful point there. Because there's two different types of non-certified coaches. There is coaches that do things unethically. We talked about them, I'm not going to go into detail, but there is a large amount of people who don't have certifications. They've got the will and they want and the desire to be a coach, but maybe it's just because of financial reasons. We know that it's quite costly to get into accreditation at times. So yeah, it's a really great point. It's good to see that confidence build. And I've observed it personally from the first episode all the way through to the 10th. Your confidence build, your connection get greater. It's been really wonderful. We've seen Ed's beard get shorter. And I'm glad that it's just that you're keeping it and you're not pulling it out.
Can't hide. That's the only thing. We can't hide. We can't just, because we're here every 2 weeks. So you're seeing us change in real time, right? So
yeah.
Just the beard's getting wider and wider each episode. So.
Excellent. We're going to keep an eye on that over season 2. Let's see how Ed shapes at the end of season
2.
Yeah.
He might decide to dye it maybe a brown. You never know. Let's wait and see.
No, I'm happy aging gracefully. So
brilliant. Okay, it's the time that I've been waiting for, that I've been excited to ask you. Okay, so I've got a bit of a quick fire. So it's just a test to see if you're on the same page with some of the questions that I've got. It's going to be a lot of who questions. So if you think it's you, just put your hand up. If you think it's the other, if you think it's Jane, if you think it's Ed, if you think it's Jane, just do a point. And if you can get a match, you'll get a point. Let's see how many points you can get out of 9. So you can take a few seconds to think about it, and then we'll just have a little bit of discussion on each question if you want, just a few things to explain. Okay, question 1. Who has made the biggest blooper on the podcast? Ed, would you like to share a little bit of that, or do you want to keep it quiet?
I can't recall it. Maybe you can tell me. I can't recall. What did I do?
We'll come back to that.
Okay, we'll keep that away. We'll keep that
I
behind
tried to
the
remember.
scenes.
Hopefully, it was off screen as
Well,
well.
I think we should close our eyes. We might cheat in the process.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was a contender at the start of this episode, so yeah, I messed up at the beginning of this one, so we all do it. So, but yeah,
Has
we'll
been
move on to
some.
question two. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
no, there has been some crazy moments where I've had to run from one location to another because the Wi-Fi hasn't been great. So maybe my brow was a little bit sweatier in certain situations, but yeah.
Yeah. We'll dig that story out and behind the scenes of season 2.
Yeah.
We'll come back. We'll
Really
come back
is.
to that. Excellent. Okay, that leads me on to the next question then. So, who is likely to ask or to say, "Can we cut that out?" Jane, yeah. Have you said quite often, or?
Well, a number of times. I think out of 10 episodes, 4 or 5, give or take.
Yeah, brilliant.
We always say we let the editing team manage that. So we always send a note saying, this
Yeah.
time maybe let's.
No, I love that, and I appreciate that as well. Like, I can hear that. Cut that out.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I think, Jane, it is always you, yeah.
Well,
No, brilliant. Okay, who is the biggest clock watcher or timekeeper? Oh, we've got a mismatch here. So you're both just expecting each other to watch the clock. Yeah, you got the faith and trust in each other. Yeah.
As we said earlier, I sometimes forget I'm on a podcast, and I do have a little timer beside me, and then when it gets to 28 minutes, I'm like, oh no, we have to start wrapping up. So
Yeah. No, that's brilliant that you both went for each other. I think the problem would have only occurred if you both said yourself.
yeah, so it shows that both of us are hoping the other person is keeping an eye on it, right?
Or a really deep level of trust between you as well. So.
Maybe why we run over 30 minutes sometimes. So.
Brilliant. So we got 2 out of 3. Next question. Who panics the most when tech goes wrong? James, own up.
I think I think it's just natural. Because you're thinking of the guests who take time away to spend with you, and all of a sudden something isn't working, or you forgot to charge your laptop, or silly things. So,
or the Wi-Fi decides today I'm not working with you.
Yeah, that's the most frustrating thing. But you just have to breathe because these things occur, right? So to your questions, Paul, I don't want to take too much away, but that is something that I learned as well to just live in the moment. Because with the podcast, we've had a number of times where we had to, at least 2 or 3 times where we've had to reschedule, or 2 or 3 times where I've had to run to a different location. And it's just about breathing because these things will occur and not to allow it to impact then the sessions. And I'm glad to hear it doesn't impact because it generally happens at the very beginning. So I'm glad that people don't notice that we've had hiccups beforehand. So that's a testament to me and Jane as well that we're able to compose ourselves afterwards. So,
yeah, no, and it hasn't shown in a single episode. So you've had all that.
There has been moments.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Excellent. No, really wonderful stuff. Next question. It's kind of a twofold question. Who would you say prepares the most for the sessions? Oh, we've got each other. Both deep in preparation before the session, the episodes.
Yeah, I think a lot goes on in the background, Jane, right? That people will never see. Like, it's not just, we don't just show up in the moment. We do we have WhatsApp, so we're banging back and forth. And then make sure that the hair is blow dried and I have everything sorted before we come on and wear the nice shirt. So it's a lot of work, actually, when I think about it. So
yeah, I know how it feels, Ed. I know how that feels.
You can't just show up, right?
You have to prepare at the end of the day. You have to.
Yeah. So this might make my next question a bit non-applicable here, but who wins it the most?
Yeah, I think
it depends on the day. Yeah.
If we had a neutral one, definitely moments where we both went off script for sure.
Yeah. And I think that leads me nicely on to the next question that I have here. So, who goes off on the best tangents? Ed,
Yes.
can you give us a tangent that is sticking in your mind at the moment? Or Jane, if you observe one that you...
Sometimes people that go off on tangents don't realize they go off on tangents. So maybe I need Jane to highlight when that is. But I just get really deep into some certain conversations and it brings me to a different space. Sometimes I talk about my family and my daughter, and I'm just like, why am I bringing them into this conversation? But anyway, it's part of the journey. So yeah, that's what I can think of.
Yeah, I will have said the family and your daughter. It comes up a lot, especially in I think the last episode we did. And then I was looking at him. I'm like, Ed, come on.
Move on. Yeah, so that's where we need maybe a poke, some way, a virtual poke to say, okay, let's move this in a different direction. So
I think it's all part and parcel of the storytelling, no, Ed?
Yeah,
it is.
actually,
right?
So. Stories. We want to hear more about it, but because I'm one of the co-hosts, I know we have a time limit.
Yeah, so that goes back to the other question. So Jane is watching the clock. So
we start with Coach and we end up with Ed's travels in Brazil or something like
that. Yeah, trying to keep it authentic, right? So relatable.
Brilliant. Excellent stuff. Next question, we've got 3 left. Who asks the deepest questions to our guests?
I think that'd be unfair. I think we both asked.
We both do that.
Yeah, I think we both do that. And as coaches as well, that's what we're interested in. And I think that's where we bounce off each other. That's where we get our energy, because sometimes Jane misses my blind spots and I miss hers, and we're able to jump in and ask certain questions. Or Jane mentioned this beautifully, that maybe she is more of a, I'll use the word expert in a certain area and can gravitate and lean into it, and I allow her then to take over. But then also there's a great opportunity for me to ask really good questions in that space as well, because maybe I'm not an expert, but I'm coming from a curious point of view, and Jane does exactly the same. So I think we complement each other there with some of the questions that we do ask.
Yeah, I do agree with Ed. Using the last episode we did with Patricia, Ed, that was his area of expertise. So I was more of following his lead and asking questions where I feel like, no, I need to know more. So it's more like it depends on the expertise, to the episode that you're having.
No, brilliant. And we see that in every session, that you both ask those really deep questions, you bounce off each other, you capture each other's blind spots. You've really gelled together, I think, as a team, which is really visible in the episode. So well done on that. Just 2 questions left. And I don't know if I've seen this actually. I'm trying to think back, but who is most likely to challenge a guest? Yeah. Have you challenged a guest? I'm trying to think back if we have actually challenged a guest, because we know we're creating that safe space, we're putting all the great information out. I'm trying to think if there's been a moment where we've actually challenged.
And I think challenge can sometimes have a negative connotation, right? It can mean that you're against the view or whatnot, and that's not what we understand it to be in coaching or coaching minds. So I do remember Dr. Rani had some great conversations, and we would have asked, can she explain further what that actually meant? So I really enjoyed that session to dig in deeper. And then Lucy had a couple as well, where Jane, you mentioned about, she talked a little bit about reverse mentoring and the different types of mentorship across intergenerational. So challenging is asking those questions about, well, what does that actually look like as well, right? So can you explain that a little bit further for our audience, because I don't understand it, or whatever it may be. So they're the 2 that comes to mind, but also around Sharon and Kirsty, who did a lot around neurodiversity. I was really interested in that, and just asking kind of, you could say, challenging questions, but I know Jane was as well. I suppose just comes from a curiosity standpoint for me.
I will say why I said Ed is because for me, I'm a deep thinker. So when somebody brings out a point, it takes me time to kind of process it and all that. But Ed is a fast thinker, so he's always on. I will have a question eventually, but Ed has already come up with this. So
We'll take more time to have space then, right? Because that's a good learning then for session 2. So.
No, brilliant stuff. And just I love that definition of challenge there, Ed, because I have the final question might be a little bit of a challenging question for the two of you to wrap up and close our session. But who would struggle most without the other in an episode?
Come up again, who would?
Who would struggle the most? So if one of you had to step away for some reason, who would struggle the most to run and pick up that?
I'll go first, Jane, or you can jump in. We create that space.
I would say neither of us, because there was a time the net was having some glitches, because we normally prepare for sessions between Ed and we don't just show up. So we always know, we have a map of how we want the session to run. Like we have some questions between us. So I would say we'll be fine. If Ed was not going to show up, of which I hope not, I'll be fine. And I know it's the same case with him, but I'd love to hear his thoughts.
Yeah, personally, I don't think it would work. Because I think it's working because we bounce off each other and we complement each other. And I think as Jane said, I think we both struggle if we didn't have each other there, because we have that energy that we use to really create this space. And I don't think it would be as impactful as we're turning this into, because it is the both of us that are, and it's a different dynamic, right? As we said before, there's a lot of podcasts where you don't necessarily see two co-hosts and a guest. So I think we would both struggle equally, and I don't think it would be, maybe I don't want to be disingenuous to either of us, but I don't think it'd be as impactful for the CoachCast if it wasn't Jane and Ed. And I think when we eventually, if we ever did move away from it, Paul, you just have to retire the CoachCast and just put it up there as Jane and Ed, and no one else can take over. So.
Yeah, we would have to do that. Yeah, and it wasn't like long term. It was just, if one of you was sick and you had a problem, yeah. I guess you just reschedule and make sure both of you attend. So yeah, so it's the Jane and Ed podcast. Yeah, brilliant. No, honestly, you've been excellent, and that brings the end of my quick fire questions. And I feel that connection between both of you. I think you've really gelled really well, and it's evident in everything that you do together. But I'll let our listeners decide as well. Please let us know, do you feel that level of connection between Jane and Ed? And then just one final words from you both is we've got season 2 coming up very, very soon. How are you feeling about season 2 before we say goodbye from this interview today?
Jane, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling excited. Season 1 was more of setting the foundation for us as co-hosts. Now, season 2, I have to say we are better. We have improved from last year, from season 1. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to meeting new people, new coaches that we're going to be interviewing. I'm looking forward to learning as well and stretching far beyond my comfort zone.
Yeah, just one to all that. Season 1 was an unknown. So we stepped into it kind of just going with the flow and see where it takes us. Season 2, we're a little bit more structured. We're still bringing the same elements to it, but I suppose we're a little bit more comfortable. But that also brings its own challenges, because then in your own mind, you start creating expectations. And I don't want to kind of set too many expectations. I always want the podcast just to be genuine, authentic, and fluid. So, but like everything in life, you make improvements as you move forward. So we've noticed things that we want to kind of hone in on, and that just helps us to grow and develop as well. So with session 2, we have already a couple of guests lined up, and it's going to be really exciting, and lots of different diverse conversations in there that will challenge me and Jane as well to make sure that we're asking the right questions. I suppose for season 2, what personally I would love is if people do have questions in the audience that would like us to ask any guests, that they want to share them, that we can kind of weave those in, because we are very appreciative that we get this platform to do it, but we also want the impact to be from our audience as well, to understand what they want to hear. So if they want to just drop comments, please do. We'll build up a bank of questions that we will, and even if they wanted to add their name, we will give them a shout out on the podcast. This person asked this question, etc. So.
No, brilliant. I love that. Thank you both. I'm super excited for season 2 of the Jane and Ed podcast show. another season 2 of the CoachCast. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. So Jane, Ed, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing a bit more about you, yourselves, your connection together, and what you've taken away from season 1. And super excited for season 2. Thank you to all our listeners. Looking forward to seeing you all in our next season. Thank you.
Thank you.